Hi, folks. I'm Gene McLoughlin. I'd like to welcome you to Old Bridge Outlook with Mayor Owen Henry. Today, we're going to be continuing part 2 of our series on how to write a book. We're pleased to welcome back our guest today, Marisa Santoro. And Mayor, always good to have you.
Good to be here, Gene. Thank you.
Mayor, anything else happening around? I know you got the golf course.
Yeah, I was hitting a couple balls this morning. A lot of people there. The high school golf team was over there. They're
Really?
excited. Speaking about the high school, we have a number of students from Germany in town for 2 weeks. They've come over. We're like an exchange program with them, so we're very excited for them. They're going to get to see all and everything about Old Bridge, and
good.
they go back and then interact, and then we send students over to Germany.
And how long is the period? The whole semester, or
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
It's a 2-week program.
2 weeks.
I had breakfast with them yesterday. They were very excited to be here in the United States.
Oh, good. Now you're
And they speak better English than I do.
I was going to say, but you're speaking better German, right?
Yes, I'm German. I speak very little. I understand. It's a tough language.
Yeah.
And then we're bringing them up to one of the biggest German clubs on the East Coast is the Deutsche Club of Clark. They'll be having dinner up there next Friday.
Oh, okay.
So everybody up at the German club is very excited to be hosting, young men and women, from Germany.
Okay, that's neat.
It's a great program because the kids, they interact and they learn from each other and our culture, and I think it makes it a better world, a better place.
I think so too. I think it's a great idea.
When the future gets together.
Yes.
In the current time, yes.
Right. Okay, Mayor, thank you. Marisa, maybe we can pick up where we left off. What happens when you lose creativity, when you run out of gas? What happens?
Yeah, I think that it's a very, very expected thing to happen. But the truth is when there's no oil left in your lamp, there's no light left to shine. And you really need to take responsibility as a writer or anything that you're doing to refuel yourself. And so there's lots of things you can do. I'm a big believer of letting go, pausing, even if you're taking a break for a little while. Getting outside, just doing things that you love. Also, another thing is really recognizing for yourself that, you reminding yourself of why you're writing, and maybe just change the genre of what you're writing as well. You don't have to just focus on your topic. There are many other things you can be writing for. And about, but I think it's definitely a consideration that everyone goes through. Is it really,
you just get uninspired, you lose that
Yeah,
zip?
I think so. I think with everything you do, it becomes a little bit monotonous, and your energy drops. And when your energy drops, you need to refuel. And so, for me personally, for creativity, I would listen to piano music. Classical music would spur my creativity, specifically Mozart. That was just my thing.
Really?
Maybe for others, it's doing long drives, but really walking away and pausing to just to reignite creativity.
Is this pretty much a regular thing with writers? Do they have this self-doubt? Do they have this uninspired moment?
I think every writer does, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I spoke about in our last episode, imposter syndrome. The self-doubt, I believe, really comes from fear. There are 3 fears which are primarily driving our everyday decisions: the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, and the fear of looking foolish. And I think I think that really feeds into the self-doubt, especially when you're writing something. Is what I'm writing, meaningful? We talked about how do you know you're writing something meaningful in our last episode. And so you really have to embrace the fear. I believe that when you feel that fear, it's an opportunity for growth. And so rather than resist, because when we resist, right, we actually get more of what we don't want. When you embrace the fear and really externalize it, talk about, some of the things that are going on for you, internally, because it's all in your mind, really.
Yes.
And get it out and talk to those that are supporting you, your family, your friends, colleagues. And recognize that with the fear and the self-doubt and even anxiety, it's an opportunity for growth. And I know we don't always see it that way,
right.
But it really is an opportunity for us to turn it around and recognize that you writing your book was not random. You're actually placed here for a reason, and your message matters.
That's a good way to put it. One thing I was going to ask you is this more common with the new writer? This insecurity and this self-doubt, is more common then, or does it occur with veteran writers like yourself?
I think it occurs with all writers. Yeah, I think probably the new writer might have a little bit more self-doubt going on because the whole process is brand new, from writing to publishing to finding an agent. I mean, it's just, but I think speaking with other writers and myself, I still write today. I'm not working on a book currently, but I write a lot of material for my programs or articles. I'm a writer for American City Business Journals, and the way I see it is if you work backwards from what are people really asking for. I do a lot of polls with my community of what the challenges are that they're going through, especially during COVID. And if I see something that's a really common pain point, then I'll write about it. And I think that does feed into helping you gain the confidence to write, to keep writing, and to feel like you're writing something worthwhile.
When you talk about your community, who is your community? Your students or your contemporaries?
My community is called In Our Shoes. We're a global professional community of mid-career professionals and senior leaders. We're based here in the U.S. as well as in Europe. And we have calls, we have programs, events. I've done a lot of work in London. That's actually where I started my business in the London financial services markets. And so we have a Slack channel, and we talk about, what's going on. Even today, someone texted me this morning, and she said she was feeling a little insecure on an interview, and told her to do her mantras, raise the vibration, and go in there like you have the job. And that's really it.
With this In Our Shoes, is this you're touching on an international
It's
situation?
a global community, yes.
I thought this was strictly your website. It's more than that.
In Our Shoes it's a corporate leadership training and coaching practice, but it's also a community of professionals, yeah.
Okay, and how do you work with that?
Well, the way we work with it is really empowering professionals to recognize that it's not just you who's going through these challenges. And I think that's part of the mindset, right? That's where we're talking today. I'm the only one that's going through this. And the truth is, as a writer or as a career-driven professional, there are real things that we all struggle with, and you're not alone. So In Our Shoes, the premise really behind that was there are plenty of people who have been in your shoes. And this is a learning environment for us to learn from one another. And I've learned plenty when I look back at my own mentors and women above me looking up the ladder and across. It's really recognizing that you're not alone, and there is a support system in a trusted space.
Marisa, is your target audience mostly women?
It is mostly women. It's how I launched In Our Shoes. However, today I hear a lot of men that share with me, especially my TED Talk, Speaking Without Apology, which was geared for women, and how we constantly dilute ourselves through consistently apologizing without even realizing it.
What was that called? You used a term there. What was it called?
Well, the TED Talk is called Speaking Without Apology.
Okay.
Yes. And that was a message where it was focused mainly for women. But after I did the talk, I had so many men reach out to me and said, I know, you were focused with women, but men deal with this as well.
Yes.
We almost feel like, am I being too aggressive? When I'm really just trying to be intentional to the agenda at hand. And so that was an eye-opener for me. And a whole other, spin-off of that after the Me Too movement especially is, how can men support women, but also how can men not be perceived as suppressing women? So two sides of the same coin, but all came out of that talk. So yes, I think men do relate a lot to the platform.
Mayor, that's interesting. You were talking yesterday about some of the similarities between Marisa's work with her book and your work as a mayor. Did you go through these same moments of self-doubt?
With the workforce constantly changing,
Yes, sir.
and society constantly changing? Absolutely. Always thinking ahead, and always
questioning yourself
questioning.
at times?
Well, yeah. But how to get my message out? That's the most important part. How do you have the message? How do you get it out there? We know the pen is mightier than the sword.
So, yes.
So, and we see it. We all, when we watch a show that's well written. Right,
Yes.
we remember that show for, like The Sopranos, I thought was well written.
Oh, yeah.
We still use lines from The Sopranos.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am hooked on Yellowstone now, and it's just a well-written show. You know?
We just started on that one.
Yeah, just well written. You remember the lines, what they're saying. So, and now that the strike is over,
Oh, thankfully,
so hopefully we'll get the
Hopefully
More
get some
movies.
programming going.
we'll
Yes.
get some programming going on. So you're right on point.
But some of these
How
sensations.
to get it out and how to get it right. A lot
Yeah.
of times you want to do the right thing, but we do it wrong.
Right. Storytelling is such a big part of leadership in an authentic way.
it's
The
a major
story,
part, yeah.
that you're trying to share.
Marisa, if I may, we had some chat about mindset.
Yes.
What are we talking about when we say mindset?
Mindset is, it's mastering your mental game before your mind is taken back by self-doubt and insecurity. I think there's a lot of work that we can do ahead of time to sort of get ahead of the setbacks that we have when we get the self-doubt and the inner crow starts to sort of crow in our ear telling us we're not good enough. And with mindset, I think that you really have to recognize for yourself first that you are a writer, even if you've never been published before.
Yes.
And by hook or by crook, doing things that will get you into that state. For some, it could be meditation, it could be affirmations are so big, recognizing why you feel that you are qualified to write something that would be meaningful to others. Taking some time, we talked about taking some time away from your work.
Yes.
And also, you know, just even visualization, you know, looking at images of what you really want to create. Do you envision people, for instance, lining up at a bookstore and seeing you and meeting you? That's got to be part of your entire mental framework, really, because that's where you're headed. And so if you haven't sort of established those images for yourself first, then you know, then that's energy that's going to be put right back into your book if you don't have that mindset.
That's an interesting point. It does definitely raise your ego a little bit, huh? If you have the right mindset.
Yes, and in a good way. I have a problem with the word ego only because the ego tends to shoot us down, and it's, you know, it's more. I like to use the word spirit more.
Spirit, okay. We use the word spirit.
Spirit,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marisa. We're getting ready to take a break, folks. We're talking episode 2 to teach you how to write your book, write your novel. We're going to be picking up with Marisa Santoro. You cover part 2 of our journey. We'll be back in a moment.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But you probably won't. You're busy. Kids, work, show coming back in 48 seconds. So let's do this now. Hold up 1 finger if you're a man, women, 0. 3 more fingers if you're over 60, 2 over 50, 1 over 40. If you're not sure, keep in mind you're sitting on a couch right now, so 1 more finger if you're not very active. 1 finger if yes, 0 if no. 1 yes, 0 no. Next, find the body type that looks most like you and hold up that many fingers while I look around awkwardly. And that's it. If you're holding up 5 fingers or more, you probably have prediabetes. Sorry to be so blunt, but hey, you're busy. Just go to the site.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Be right there. Wait. Use the shovel and bucket of water, remember? Drown, stir, drown, feel. Then make sure it's cool.
Where'd you learn that?
SmokeyBear.com. Brushed up on some tips before we left. Don't want to start a wildfire, right?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Old Bridge Outlook with Mayor Owen Henry. Today we're in part 2 of our episodes of How to Write a Book. And helping us do that, our guest is Marisa Santoro. You come to a point, I'm sure, when you have to stop writing, maybe say, hey, I got to look at it, clean it up a little, a draft.
Right.
How do you do that? How many drafts do you do?
Well, I lost count of how many drafts I had of my book, but I think it's really important for everyone who's thinking about writing a book is not to touch the initial draft when you're writing it.
Really?
Go through it and
Oh,
just
okay.
let it sit and simmer. Come back to it maybe a week later, so you're looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. I think that's so important, because what's inevitably going to happen is you're going to see, oh, there are holes in here that I forgot to fill in. Oh, you know what? I need to expand a little bit further on this character or this concept. Or, you know what, that seemed a little bit overdone. I'm going to take that out and park it somewhere. And I say park it because even if you are sort of dissecting your drafts as you're going, you may actually end up using it later. So I'm a big believer, whether you're writing a resume or, you know, writing a book, right? Put everything in there and then cut later. Because inevitably you may use it, especially if your publisher wants you to go in a different direction, and you might pull from that material. So I think that's really important. If you recall from our previous episode, I had introduced the concept of mind mapping, where you're
Yes.
putting all the concepts that you
Yes.
want to put in your book into the book. Now, when you do that next review, or that second, third review, you may realize, you know what, going back to your mind map, have I actually covered all of the things that I said I wanted to go with? You know, the mind working how the brain works, right? Leverage your mind map. Look at what you've already created up front. Remember, that was in the beginning stage.
Yes, ma'am.
Now
Yes.
you're doing the editing, and just really go back to your mind map and ask yourself, you know, have I missed this? Is this, you know, concept going to be still weaved in? And because you've already have that sort of roadmap through your mind map, you can easily go back and forth and in a more systematic way, recognize for yourself if you've been completely honest with your work. And I think that's so key.
How much time do you take to do these initial drafts and follow-up drafts as you move through the production of the book? How much time do you take?
At one session, you could easily spend 90. I normally didn't do more than 90 minutes when I was editing my
Yes.
drafts. In one session, I think that's a good chunk of time. But other people may be able to go longer. Really goes back to your peak performance.
And how many drafts do you feel you do?
I would say I probably had about between 15 and 20 drafts
Really?
before I obtained a publisher. After the publisher, then, you know, they're taking it in a certain direction, and so you have to be prepared to revise and work with the editor again with yet another set of drafts. So
When you're doing the drafts, if I may, are you inserting new information, or are you redoing or revisiting older information, just polishing it?
both. You're doing both. Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, as you're in that creative zone, you're thinking of new ideas and concepts, so you're adding new things. And, you know, as I said, you might be, you know, speaking with someone on the street and they say something that triggers, you'll go back to your draft and you'll put that in. You might actually interview people. So if you're writing, let's say, a fiction story about a character who just went through a very difficult divorce, you might interview a couple of people and hear their story and their experience and want to put it in your book. For me, my work was nonfiction, so I had a lot of case studies from the professionals that I
Okay.
work with, but fiction as well. So I think that inevitably when you're doing your draft, you're pulling in more information, you're taking out, you're moving around. I think the moving around is underestimated. You will move and move and move
Really?
till the cows come home, because now you're looking at it with a new lens. You're not in that creative mode as much as you are in more of this analytical mode. Am
Yeah,
I staying
that's a
true
good
to
point,
my
yes.
my
Mayor, if
my-
I may, as the mayor, you were certainly involved in writing many things, right? You were writing budgets, you were writing planning. How did you handle it?
Well, Marisa was right on. When we have, I prepare a document, whether it's a speech, whether it's
Right.
going to talk to, or preparing a letter.
Yeah.
There's so much information I have. But I don't have the luxury of writing a book.
No.
So I have to do 4 or 5 drafts also. I put so much in there.
Yeah.
But also, I only have 5 minutes at the most before people are going to just go
Yeah.
on their phone. They don't want to listen to anyone talking for more than, especially when I'm speaking.
Yeah.
So, it's that process of going through it and getting the point, what needs to be driven home, what you can do without, what you can bring up at the next time. So it's the same process that she just
Same
talked
process
about.
you felt,
Exactly
yeah,
the
because
same.
you had a budget book this thick with many things in it.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier when other people are contributing to the document you're preparing. But
Yes,
if it's
sir.
solely your, like when I have to prepare a document, it's difficult to get all the information that I have
Yeah.
condensed
True.
and be. You want people to remember
And
what,
get it
what you
meaningful
spoke
to
about.
people who are going to.
You know, there's nothing more rewarding than after talking to a crowd, somebody coming up and saying, "Hey, great speech." You know, I gave one yesterday.
Isn't that great?
And they think, oh, good, you hit everything. I said, oh man, you should have seen it before I came here. It was a book. And I reduced it to 3
distilled,
pages.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's difficult.
But there's great
It's hard.
similarity to what Marissa's
right.
talking about. Yeah.
You know, writing is writing.
Yeah.
And delivering that message is delivering that message.
It sure is. Marisa, if I may, go to the final point here. How do you know when you're done? When you're writing a book, when you're writing a novel, how do you know when you're finished?
Well, if you recall that table of contents that I advised
Yes.
writing ahead of time, right?
Yes.
Those are the bones of
That's
your
a
book.
great idea.
Those are the bones, right? And inevitably it will change. I absolutely recommend going back to that table of contents and looking and seeing if you've put some good meat on those bones for your book, for your framework. And if the answer is no, then you keep fleshing it out. Again, walk away, come back. And if it feels right, also instinct, go with your gut. You know, it's sort of like when you've, I'll use a resume as an example, you know, when you put in as much information as you feel like you could, and it looks and feels like the story you want to tell, then you're done. I think a lot of it comes to more your instinct as well as just logic, you know, that roadmap.
Getting done is a relative term, though. I mean, when you're finished, are you always finished, or you have other ideas going forward? Well, we talked earlier about feedback.
Yeah.
Is part of this feedback too? Does this occur too, to assure you that you're done?
Absolutely, feedback is so key. The way I obtained feedback, I wasn't part of a writing group. I know
Yes,
many
ma'am.
writers are, and I think they're great. For me, I created a focus group with my community.
Well, did you?
So I sent out an email and I said, hey, I'm working on a book, and these are the, you know, I have some chapters I want to share with you. Would you be willing to be part of my focus group and give me feedback? And the feedback was just amazing. I got feedback on concepts that I didn't think were as important, and I got feedback on things that said, you know what, I think that's been overspoken in the media. Probably not, don't want to, you know, bring that home in the book. So it's right from the source, and you could also ask your family, your friends,
Right.
people you trust that are going to give you honest feedback. You could even take an analytical approach where you can ask people to score the feedback on a scale of 1 to
Yes,
5.
yes.
And then you get back your metrics. And I actually put in my book, know your metrics, because in any part of business, you need to, you know, sum up your success. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
the chapters, and not even the chapters, the sections of my book were scored based on, you know, on these levels of how well do you think I'm hitting home with owning your authority in your career.
Well, that was one thing I was going to mention. Isn't the feedback, though, isn't it desirable to get professional feedback, or do you get just feedback?
Well, that's where the publisher comes in. The
Okay.
editor will come in and say, "Hey, I'm not, you know, quite clear on where this is going." You'll get feedback that way. When you submit your first manuscript, this was my experience. I heard back directly from the publisher that said, you know, they had just had some questions. It's not really poking holes. They're just asking questions because now they have the concept, they have the manuscript, and now they're, you know, it's sort of part of the process to understand if you actually are taking the book where you said you would. And so that's definitely going to, it's going to, you know, necessitate you making changes to your manuscript.
I'm sure it is. How do you handle feedback, though? Is it all positive? Suppose you get negative feedback.
It's all critical. Yeah, I think it's all critical. I'm a big fan of feedback. I think the big F word is
Yes.
feedback. We all need the feedback, positive and negative, but I tend to think of it as whenever I hear what might be perceived as negative, I try to ask myself, well, is this an opportunity for me to grow, and is the feedback true? And, you know, usually it's not in the moment. You have to step away for a week and look at it again and acknowledge whether it is or not, and then ask others if they agree with the feedback.
But the feedback, if it's negative, it has to give you some pause to go back and look at your document, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of what quality is, what's in, what's out, what's right, what's wrong.
That's right, that's right. I do recall some feedback which at the time felt negative. There were certain terms that I was using that they had come back and said, hey, you know, is this really aligned to the message that you're going for a senior leader, mid-career professional senior leader? And so I realized I was probably going too broad, more with the emerging leader, you know, a couple years into their career versus the mid-career professional. So that was feedback. You know, you have to get really niche down when you write a book. So at the time it felt negative, but looking back, it was probably the best feedback I could have gotten.
Well, it comes back to a little bit what we have discussed, and that's the mindset. What kind of mindset do you have? Do you get aggravated when you get negative feedback, or do you just plow through it, or?
Yeah, I don't think you plow through it. I think you really have to take a step back and give yourself a chance. You know, when we receive feedback or we hear it, it's not necessarily the time when we receive it. You know, I think there's listening and hearing it, and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
maybe a day later actually receiving it. And so I think if you were to take any feedback and plow through anything immediately, you know, it's the difference between a response and a reaction, right? I don't believe in reacting to feedback. I think you have to really let it simmer.
I think that's a good point. I was going to ask you that. You don't react right away. You know,
No.
that's your, I used the word ego before, but
Yes.
you know, get your ego involved. You try not to.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially if you've done all that mindset work, feeling
Yeah.
like I am writing something meaningful, and then you hear negative feedback externally. But you also have to realize people who are giving you that external feedback are looking at your work for the first time.
Right.
And so they're the best audience because they're a fresh set of eyes, and so it's really more honest than you realize. We're too close to our work, and so we really do need that.
Okay, so Mayor.
See what I find,
Yes,
you know,
Mayor, please.
there's certain feedback, positive and negative, but then there's criticism. I don't know if
Yeah.
you get criticized and tell you know, you're wrong, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're talking
That's a
about.
good
Where in my position,
Yes,
you know,
sir.
I don't mind feedback, whether it's negative,
Yeah.
because if somebody gives me negative feedback, I try to build on that and try
Yes.
to turn it around. But there are people who say, you know, you're a bum, you don't know what
Yeah,
you're talking about,
yeah.
you know, you shouldn't be in the position you're in. So there are two different things
Yes.
between
Yes.
feedback and criticism.
That's a
That's
good
true.
distinction, Mayor.
That's
Good distinction.
true. I've never gotten that level of
So you're
feedback.
lucky.
Yes, I've been lucky. When I go into politics, maybe I'll have to.
Don't.
Don't go to politics.
Write a book, don't.
All politicians write books.
Yeah, but that's
that's
human
right.
nature. Nobody wants to be criticized.
No, nobody wants to be criticized.
Especially when they
Right, it
they
doesn't
mean
feel
well,
good.
they want to do good things, and when somebody tells you you're not doing good things.
No, you're absolutely
So-
right.
Right.
Marisa?
Feedback, everyone should accept feedback.
Yes,
I
yes,
agree.
that's true.
It's tough sometimes, but I agree. I do agree. And folks, we're coming to the end of episode 2 of teaching you, helping you learn how to write a book. We're going to be progressing on to episode 3, so please stay tuned. Our guest, our author, Marisa Santoro, is going to be present in the Old Bridge Public Library on November 12th, and she'll be doing a program, and she'll also be talking about her book, Own Your Authority. I want to thank Marisa for being with us again today, and Mayor, thank you, and be well.